Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Storytelling Alchemist show here on the Los Angeles Tribune. Very excited about being here this week and excited about the subject we're going to be talking about. My guest tonight has been on the show before, probably about now going about 7 or 8 months. It seems like time has flown by quite fast in that time frame. But we're going to be speaking about his new book, Break Through the Limits of the Brain. And so I'm excited, and please welcome to the show, Joseph Selbie. Joseph Selbie. Thank you. Hello, Joseph. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us to talk about your work and breaking through the limits of the brain. So that's obviously a very big subject when you really think about it. When people think our capacity is very limited with our brain and our connection to God, I guess is the way to put it. So can you talk about how you got started in this work and for this particular project or this particular book? And then,
Well, I had always been fascinated by the fact that neuroscience, modern neuroscience, tells us a lot about how the brain works in great detail, but doesn't really, except in rare cases, address transcendental experience or experience of subtle reality or experience of the divine. And so I really enjoyed digging into that subject to see if there was research that could point one to how both of those realities were possible. In other words, how both the intricacies of the brain and the ability to perceive higher realities were both possible. So what I found, and I'm by no means the first person to find it, but what really strongly came to the fore is that from our infancy, we start wiring our brains. So basically, the brain wires to support anything that we do. And human infants are rare in the entire animal kingdom in that we have almost no instinctual abilities for voluntary movement, for speech. We're not like the deer that gets born and is, running alongside its mother 15 minutes later. We really need to very slowly, deliberately learn how to use our bodies, slowly, deliberately learn how to understand what other people are saying, and eventually to be able to talk ourselves and to get past crawling to walking to running. All of these things we actually have to do over and over. And as we do so, we wire massive amounts of our brain to support those abilities. And the circuits that we wired when we were young are circuits we're still using as adults to walk and talk and run. They're our way of learning how to operate in the world around us, to perceive distances, and to coordinate sensory input with our movements and actions. And this pretty much takes over most of the brain. Then we also start wiring our brains for ways in which we think, ways in which we feel emotions, ways in which we respond to situations. And they become wired as well because they support whatever we do in those situations. So if we're prone to being annoyed, our brain supports our being annoyed. And it will stimulate the emotions, it will stimulate memories, it will stimulate trains of thought that all support us being annoyed. And of course, it can support more positive things as well. All of this is amazing and fascinating. But at the end of it, and that end comes fairly soon, the end of this process of wiring our brains into our 20s and maybe as late as our 30s, We have wired the brain exclusively to operate with awareness of the senses in the body. And we have left behind any ability to experience subtle reality. When very young children often have subtle experiences, they see astral lights, they see angels, they see what looks to them like fairies. They see all these things quite naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're talked out of them by their parents, who are either
Mm-hmm.
unhappy with them for, this fantasy that they're presenting, or afraid that it's, going to get away and turn into something big for this child. And so we get talked out of it. And then by the time we're in our, tens and teens, that ability is gone.
Right.
So at the same time, we have examples of mystics, saints, sages, who obviously can experience profoundly the subtle realities. They can experience superconsciousness. They can experience, and superconsciousness is the awareness of things beyond the conscious brain and body. So how do they do that? Well, it's really the same way. Only by the time we reach adults, we refer to it as rewiring rather than wiring the brain. But rewiring is done almost exactly the same way, in that whatever we do, whatever we perceive, the brain will begin to wire circuits that connect to thoughts, that connect to feelings, that connect to memories, that support that experience. And then it also supports how we did it. So if we meditate regularly, and this is one of the key things that meditation does, not only do we experience a more satisfying peace and a calming of our emotions, perhaps an elevation of our emotions and our thoughts. And not only do we experience all that, but the brain starts to rewire to support that. And the more we meditate, the more easy it is for us to have those experiences. Now, there's other things we can do that help us have those experiences in addition to meditation, but meditation is one of the key things. So that's kind of it. That's the book in a nutshell, is that we've created limits unintentionally, unknowingly, from our infancy on. And in order to break through those limits, we need to be very directed and determined to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, we could have done something as simple as stubbing our toe and then created an experience and be like, oh, be careful. And then created limits within us. And, we learn, the behaviorists seem to think that we change our behaviors based on experiences that we create, back in our childhood and our adults as well. But it's interesting when we think about the limitations of, we were potentially seeing fairies or other things, and then our parents are adults. I don't want to say all parents, adults in general, because that's what they understood. Said those things don't exist. And, all of us have had different experiences based on our parents. Somebody's parents might have lived in the Great Depression, so their perception of reality is vastly different, and they impart that onto their children or their grandchildren or whatever.
Yeah, and as children, we are unconsciously embracing whatever those people in our lives who are our biggest influencers do. We just soak it up. We create our own neural circuits that completely match what our parents, our siblings, people that we have a particular connection to very quickly, especially when we're children, because it just goes right into circuit building. there's no filter that we apply. Like, do I really want to behave like this? Do I really want to have these opinions? That kind of discrimination doesn't really come along until we're relatively much older.
So obviously we can change these things within ourselves, these programs or limitations, through meditation and other things. What are some things you suggest other than, obviously meditation's a big one. What are some other things that somebody can do to start unraveling these programs, or I guess neural pathways that they've created in their brain?
Yeah, they might as well be programs. They're not developed like computer programs, but they have that same kind of effect. As you mentioned, you might stub your toe. You might learn how to you might learn how to play catch, and that process will stay with you forever, that you can put your hand in a mitt and somebody can throw you a ball, you open the mitt, you catch the ball. And if you hadn't learned it as a child, you would have not known what to do, right? And so we also have emotional programming that is similar in that we respond automatically to situations. And this is the part of ourselves that we can't just reprogram. We can't just say, okay, I no longer want to have these kind of emotions. But we can do things, in particular, aspects of meditation where you are opening your heart more, where you're in bringing in a sense of peace and well-being. And as often as you can do that, you will build positive emotional circuits that are stronger than negative emotional circuits. So in a very simple way, try to be the way you want to be. Mm-hmm. Know that realistically, you're not going to be the way you want to be tomorrow. You're not going to overcome however many years or decades of your own circuits in your brain, but you should just start. Be that person you want to be. Concentration, creativity, devotion, being with greater inner awareness of the sense of the divine. Try to put all these things into your life. And in my book, I give all sorts of exercises for how you can do them that would be too long to explain in this format. But even with those practices that you can embrace, affirmations, energization exercises, meditation, concentration techniques, all of those are in my book. But all of them you have to decide you want to use in order to rewire your awareness and go beyond the limited awareness that we've all sort of fallen into without meaning to.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about this, I think it was Charles Fillmore said that it's a lifelong process of spirituality. It's not going to happen overnight. And you bring up good points. People want to be like, snap their fingers and change overnight. And, these are habits and things that you've been doing for years, or witnessed and learned as children. And you're not going to change those things overnight. And I think that's very good wisdom. So
the more intense your experience is, though, the more powerfully you rewire your brain. Dr. Andrew Newberg, who wrote the foreword to Break Through the Limits of the Brain, has done many, many studies. He's the author of How God Changes Your Brain. And he's done many, many studies of people who are very strong meditators, and also people who have had near-death experiences. And
Mm.
what he has seen is that the more intensity, the more your really heart and mind and will into an experience, the more rapidly you rewire your brain. So it doesn't have to be little by little, although it's more likely to be little by little than super intense all the time.
Yeah.
But those super intense experiences of great joy or feeling like you're caught up in the spirit, or just it happens to you that you are uplifted, they are very important for changing your behavior, changing your awareness, changing your feelings. Feelings, as I think you and everyone else know, feelings are the most powerful thing that direct us. So if our feelings keep pulling us away to do other things, or drawing us into other concerns, it's hard to rewire the brain. But if your heart is really moved, then it's easy to stay with it and rewire the brain. One of the common things about near-death experiencers is that when they come back from their experience, many of them, not absolutely every, but many of them say they're completely changed.
Yeah.
That all of the things that they thought were goals and purposes in their lives were kind of overturned, and they realized that learning to love and take care of other people, to be of service, to be creative, was far more important than all the other goals that they thought were important prior to that. Now, all of us can make that transition, but to make that transition in, 14 minutes of near-death experience, it speaks to how powerful that experience really is, and how it literally rewires your brain rapidly.
Yeah, countless people I've known, of friends that had near-death experiences, have really talked about that when they came out, they changed. It was so blissful and so happy for them that they came back, and they're like, the things that I thought were important just aren't important, at least not the way they were before. And they've changed to have miraculous healings and many other things that have happened to them. And, that's pretty powerful when you really think about it. So,
Yeah. Very powerful. The interesting thing that I've noticed, though, and it's something I like to kind of point out to people who are, drawn to these higher experiences, but at the same time, a little, nervous about what it will do to their life. Will it change their life in a way where they don't want to go? And what I have seen with the near-death experiences who are rapidly and powerfully changed is that rarely does their actual life change. They just live it differently.
Yeah.
They still have the same family members. They still have, in many cases, the same significant other. They simply see the reason for doing all the things they're doing in a completely different light. And so I think that when we meditate and we rewire our brains, it's not necessarily going to overturn our career, our connections, our hobbies, the things we like to do, but it will give us a wonderful, deeper perspective and inner experience while we do it.
I just want to share with everybody that you don't necessarily have to have a near-death experience.
Yes.
I was interviewing Raymond Moody one time, and he said, obviously we're not going to simulate death or have a near-death experience,
Yeah.
but we can have profound. There's also such thing as called a shared death experience, which I had many years ago. So it's that comes with a different transcendental experience as well. So
yeah. Well, any of these can be very profound. You can have profound experiences in meditation.
Meditation, yeah. Yeah.
And it's probably in some ways the most common one. And it's slower, it's gentler, but if you have a very deep experience, you can feel that you're different, and it can last for days to weeks to months that you still feel how it changed you. But again, within your life, you're calmer, you're happier, you're more, you're just more likely to be serviceful to other people. It all comes naturally. You don't have to, force yourself into some behavior that is uncomfortable to you.
So you talk about in the book that we have 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot on the earth. Are you talking about us being kind of grounded, or what can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really central concept to the physics of God that I wrote previously, and to this book, and probably to books I will write in the future, because I think the only way that we can really understand, really appreciate why meditation works, why it would be that if you meditate, you have these deeper experiences. And the reason you have these deeper experiences is because your awareness of the senses and the physical body slow down, they calm down as you meditate. Your breathing slows, your train of thought slows. And as that happens naturally when you practice just about any kind of meditation technique, you're left not with nothing, you're left with this wonderful experience. So where does that experience come from? I mean, what is it that you're experiencing? And I believe the answer is that you're experiencing your subtle body. It's often called the astral body or the energy body and many other names. But essentially, the idea is that you have a dual experience constantly. You have your physical body, you have your subtle body. They are married together. There is no obvious separation between them. Yet, your thoughts, your emotions, your memories actually originate from your energy body and not your physical body. And thus you have this 1 foot in heaven, 1 foot on earth kind of perpetual dance going on in your life. And what meditation helps you realize is that being aware of the subtle body brings with it an enjoyment, in fact, just joy, that's greater than anything that your physical body alone can provide. But that's why you have these experiences, because they are you. We are inherently superconscious beings, and we're just temporarily kind of stuck behind the screen of the mind, thinking that we are only physical beings, when we're always been, we always are, and in fact, we even act from that reality a good portion of our time. If you're sitting and thinking, it's easy for your surroundings to fade from your attention. And while you're sitting there thinking, you're in your subtle energy body, you're in your astral body. You're centered in it. When you have strong emotions, you're centered in your astral body. So the idea of having 1 foot in each world is, I think, interesting, because the saints and sages and mystics are able to, at their choice, by their determination, become completely aware of their subtle body and live in that higher consciousness, but they're also equally able to be aware of their physical body. So they have the best of both worlds. They can move back and forth, and in fact, they can be in both simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Where for us, the challenge is to first really become more deliberately aware of our heavenly astral body, and gradually learn to be able to move into it at will, to make ourselves aware of it at will, to feel that expanded super consciousness that comes with it.
Very cool. So in a sense, we're talking about as above, so below,
Yes.
Connected. Yeah. So very cool. Very cool. So what are some of the things that well, first of all, where do they find the book? I don't even ask that. I'm assuming Amazon.
It is goes on sale officially September 1st, but you can pre-order on Amazon now. And it may be available in other places for pre-order that you might expect. Various e-tailers would probably have it, but I know for sure it's on Amazon. And then it comes available with the Kindle version and the Audible version September 1st.
Okay. And then where do they find you? What is your website that they can?
You can find me at josephselbie.com.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
It's a website that can point you to articles, interviews like this one, more information about the books I've written, and just it gives you an overview of my work and my life, as well as more information.
So basically, the synopsis of it is talking about how we limit our brains. And I'm simplifying it, and then approaches on how we can gradually change that within ourselves. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, no, I think that is correct. And I think the one thing that I took away from writing the book was just how powerful the circuits in our brain are to running our lives. And that I would have said I had a lot more sort of lateral degree of movement, if you will, in behavior. But I came away thinking, wow, I'm a creature of these circuits more than I would like to admit. And so, yet at the same time, that power can be used positively. So you can be a creature of those circuits that keep you aware of higher consciousness, keep you super conscious, just as easily as you can have circuits that keep you entranced with the senses.
Nice. So any last minute wisdom or thoughts that we want to leave the audience before we press the show or stop the show or end the show?
Well, I would say, whether anyone reads the book or not, look at your life in terms of how you want to change it. Pick a change that you want to make. If you don't already meditate, or if you have a sort of on again, off again kind of meditation habit, focus on that. It's probably the single most important thing you could do to change your life. Establish a meditation habit. I offer how to meditate in a technique in the book, which people may or may not be drawn to. If you already have one that you use or another you like, just take the time to meditate. It is the single most transformative thing you can do to experience the heaven within you and to reprogram the brain more and more and more, so that you live the life you want to live, the life of creativity and joy and love that you would like to live.
I think that comes down to, what is it? Be the change you want to see in the world, but be the change you want to see in your life, I guess.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, they're twinned, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very cool. Well, Joseph, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Everybody go to Amazon and pre-order Break Through the Limits of the Brain with Joseph Selbie. And Andrew Newberg does the forward, and Andrew Newberg does amazing work. If nobody's looked up his work, definitely look it up as well. So, and Joseph, looking forward to the next book.
Well, thank you. Pleasure to be on your show with you, and blessings to one and all.
Thank you so much.